Welcome back to the Dyslexic Maverick. I am so excited to have Scott Wagner here today with me. I think our conversation is going to be so valuable. We actually tried to meet at a distribution conference. We didn't necessarily connect there, but we connected afterwards, and we just like had the best conversation. So I was like, you have to come on the podcast and share your story. So, just a little bit of background on Scott. Scott is a director of industry transformation at the National Association of Electrical Distributors, also known as NAED. He brings over 35 years of experience. And what I think is so cool is that he's gone and done everything in like the electrical world, from being an electrician to executive leadership. Like he's hit everything. And obviously what makes him so valuable for NAED. Scott leads the Digital Center of Excellence, where he helps members navigate the digital transformation, supply chain innovation, artificial intelligence adoption, and operational excellence. He also is just really, really goal focused and really passionate about mentorship and mentoring like the next generation of leaders, which I think is so important. With the HR leadership focus that I have, there can't be enough of that. So, welcome, Scott, to the Dyslexic Maverick podcast.
Thanks, Nancy. It's great to be with you today.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so excited for our conversation. Would you mind just kind of maybe like let's start with current day of kind of what your scope is at NAED and what you do for the association?
Yeah, kind of a day in the life right now is I have a lot of calls like this, talking to our members, also as much face to face as possible. I love being with people. So that's through our conferences and other events like the one you mentioned with DSG, really engaging with distributors, manufacturers, and then also technical companies, software companies that are trying to get into this space. So I'm kind of a middleman in that tech space to look at needs, but also capabilities and opportunities and help everyone connect the dots.
That's awesome. The digital side of everything we do in distribution, which you and I primarily work in, but just obviously across all businesses, is so exciting. Right? But it also, like, it challenges the brain and kind of makes us like, there's not many things that challenge our brains that much that we haven't, like, already seen before, I think, besides, like, the new AI and technology adoption that's coming into business.
Yeah, I think we're at an interesting point in time. I love history, and I look back at the 1893 Columbian Exposition, the World's Fair in Chicago. And at that World's Fair, so many new things, technologies were introduced, like the electric light, so on. That before that, most inventions, new things that came out, the average person could watch it work, see it operate, and understand what it was and how it did it. It could demystify. And those new things that came out, like the light and electric motors and the phonograph and those kinds of things, defied that understanding. And I really believe we're at another point in time where that's true again. Things with like AI, people are grasping to understand that they're afraid of it, and I think it's the digital revolution.
It is. It absolutely, and it is hard because we can't see it, right? Like, things just happen. Messages pop up on our phones, emails pop up, they go across the world, and we can't see it, like the light bulb, right? Like, and so it's a little bit scarier. I think that there's also a lack of just like understanding of what it can do, like because it's so revolutionary in then this next wave that none of us really know, right? So there's some fear in that too. I also think it's perfect for neurodivergent brains because we just see things differently. So I don't know that it's like a coincidence that we're here talking today about this and also both have differently wired brains.
Yeah, for me, it's really exciting. I love new things, and it's a new way to think about how to solve problems, which is really a big thing for me. If there's a problem that can be solved, I want to figure it out. So it's like a whole nother tool set to think about how do you solve a problem. I also think it really enables people to get out of the drudgery if we do it right. That we can be focused more on value added work, the more intellectual thinking, rather than just autopilot mode to hammer through something, rubber stamping things, whatever that may be in your world. But it's again an opportunity to kind of unravel that and spend time doing better things.
Oh my gosh, 100%. I can't wait to dig into that. Before we get too far into, kind of like the current state of things, and especially with differently wired brains, would you mind just like just telling your story of your school experience and how you started to kind of face some challenges and what that looks like? It's honestly a unique story. I've heard a lot of people's stories. I haven't heard yours before of kind of like the back and forth shift of different labels that you had on you growing up.
Yeah, so it was around the seventh grade, I think. I was having trouble in school, and I think I'd been able to just kind of fake it before. I think I shared with you in our last conversation. I did that actually in music. I faked the clarinet for almost a whole year. I couldn't play. Thinking through what was going on in my life at the time, trying to fit in at school and challenging new subjects, just struggling a bit. And at that point, my grades were suffering. My handwriting was terrible. I was also one of those kids that I was born probably the more left hand dominant, and my parents were told by our doctor, "Hey, you should condition them to be right handed." So I didn't know that till later in life, but I'm naturally left handed. So anyway, just a little more complications. So my handwriting was terrible. I was having trouble with reading, and at one point, the school actually decided to put me into a learning disabled group, special ed. And that kind of obviously that bruises your ego. I really was worried about, well, am I not as good as everybody else? Am I dumb? Can I not make it in this world this way? And the teacher in that class actually noticed something in me and started to talk to me about dyslexia and started to help me with a few things. And then the school also then turned around and did some testing, and they confirmed that, but then also moved me from that special ed setting to a talented and gifted program, which I didn't really enjoy that either. That was a lot of competitive kids that everyone was trying to see who's the top dog in that class. And I just at one point asked, can I just go back to class with my friends? And with these new things I learned about how to understand how I need to learn, what I need to kind of do reinforcement, I felt like I could get there with some extra coaching too after school. So that was really a breakthrough for me that, I felt like I, over time I've learned to look at it as almost a superpower, that I think differently, that my thinking is, I don't know. We talked about this too. I think maybe it's some ADHD undiagnosed, but I obsess about things, but it's usually about problem solving, about how to get through something. And I shared with you in our last conversation that I'll often like go to bed thinking about something and maybe dream about it, or the next morning go, I know what to do because it's been chugging in my mind for a while, and I've maybe found my way through to the other side.
It's so fascinating. Yeah, I think, gosh, there's so many things to unpack there. One, the thinking style is amazing, and I completely relate to like it's that puzzle piece that you're like, I know that it's in my brain somewhere, and I just have to keep processing the the situation or the challenge, and it's gonna come. It's just like a matter of like finding it in all the files of your brain. Um, which is so I mean, it probably ADHD and dyslexia, at least for me, I resonate with both of those as well. But I wanna go back to the school years just for a minute. I can only imagine that your confidence, like so going in, like, to, like, the more specialized, like, the lower reading groups, probably took a hit, but then I wonder what the difference was in, like, then going to gifted because you had a higher IQ, right? So and this is the thing I think so many parents don't realize is when their child gets like, diagnosed with dyslexia, they're like, "Oh my gosh, he might not or she might not do as well in life." And it's really not true. Usually dyslexics have, average or even above average IQs. It's just that language processing is a little bit harder for us. But how did that impact, like, your confidence in school?
Yeah, it was really hard. I mean, I don't remember talking about it a lot. I think I internalized a lot of it. The teacher was very encouraging. Mr. Murphy was his name. Um, really trying to help me understand that and that's really where the breakthrough was, is that we talked about things, and it wasn't about, well, go read this and then write something down. Do an essay. It was about conversational understanding, and I think that's what he saw, is that I got it. I understood, and probably a little more depth than he would even think I should have at that age. So it opened up more for me. So it was kind of like, it was finally in the sunlight, and that was kind of a dark time thinking about what all that meant. I remember I was having trouble with, I actually developed an ulcer around that time from all the stress. So it was a lot. And my parents, like I said, they weren't sure what to do. They were trying to be supportive, but They themselves, this was something that hadn't, I don't know how long dyslexia had kind of been in the normal, conversations. It was actually only around for a few years in our school at that time, programs to address it. So um, they were kind of lost. And once I got through to the other side, it was confusing too, because well, which is it? And is it going to go back again? Where are we? So yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, yeah, that would be like, there's, like, hope that, like, "Oh, I went to the gifted, so I'm not as broken, maybe, as I thought I was." But then it's equally as confusing because now you're just like, "Wait, do you even know what to do with me?" Like, I'm thinking as a kid, I'd be like, "Do these teachers know what's going on?" Um, I think you bring up a really important point too. Every successful dyslexic person I talked to had at least one teacher that believed in them. Like, they weren't able to always name it as dyslexia like yours was, which is a true gift when you can put the vocabulary to it. But at least they saw something in them that was so, like, refreshing, and I think we just hold on to that because most of the teachers were frustrated with us more than kind of poured into us.
Yeah, we were more work, I'm sure. The other thing I think about with that is, in that talented or gifted program and the competition that was there, you know, bullying gets talked a lot about today. And I don't know that I would frame it that way in my own experience, but it was very competitive. And it was, people were testing each other in there to see, well, where do I rank against this person? So that was almost even worse in some ways. But that's again why I was driven to go back with my friends, people I knew, and then I could figure things out on my own. But it's having somebody that believes in you, that's willing to invest. That is part of, and I shared this with you in our last conversation. As an electrician coming up through a trade that involves apprenticeship, it's always been important to me to share knowledge. And that also goes back to what I learned in that experience with that teacher, is that you can make a difference in someone's life by stopping and paying attention to them a little bit longer and asking questions and digging in. And again, that's kind of lived with me my whole career. Every day, if I run into someone at the grocery store and I can teach them something, I'm going to do it. So you get a lot of satisfaction out of that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's partly the curious brain that we always love to learn, so we assume that everybody else loves to learn like we like to learn, right? Because like, I think we're always learning, like, our brains are just like I see it with my kids, like, they're always tearing stuff apart, like, they're just and even, like, in the art side of things, right? Like, they're breaking it apart to learn how to put it back together, and so I think it's one of our gifts that we're just naturally curious about everything.
Yeah, I was definitely one of those kids that took everything apart. If you didn't watch me, the phone would be in six pieces. Or, I'm old enough to remember this. We had a TV repairman when I was really young, and he would come and the cover would come off the back of the TV, and I was right there looking to see what was in there. So I've always been curious about how things work mechanically, and I still, to this day, I have an old truck in my garage, and I have to tinker with stuff. I can only watch so many YouTube videos in a day.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. It's funny, my father, who's also dyslexic, works on cars, and it's almost like I watch it, and it's almost like it puts his brain at ease as he's, like, putting pieces together and kind of figuring out how it works. It's like this, like, comfort zone of his that he's just, like, more comfortable than in, like, a lot of other situations that probably seem comfortable to other people. That's kind of like his comfort spot.
Yeah, I love that part of messing with the truck or trying to figure out what parts I need, um, taking things apart even still, but also, the electrical stuff. That's part of why I really loved that that role, that experience, that learning that went with it through apprenticeship, was that everything was about solving a new problem. Every time I got a phone call, hey, you need to go here and work on this, it was about solving a problem. Sometimes it was just about building things, but at the end, you get to flip a switch and see something work. That's really satisfying. And I'm very tangible, visual. I've been told I have the spatial learning piece of my thinking is off the charts. So if I can look at something, I have to draw pictures. I got whiteboards in my house so I can draw things. I got one in the garage. So I just, again, that's part of how I process.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm going off script here, but I just have to ask. So I get a lot of questions from parents that are like, "Hey, my son or daughter is dyslexic. Like, do you have any good career paths for them?" And I think you've kind of touched on it, but I would just love to dig into that more because I do think as much as technology is amazing, the trades have been so underserved and like almost it's a lesser position, which is not the case. And I think we're going to see a flip. Like I think
Oh yeah.
a lot of the white collar automated job or white collar jobs are going to be automated and the trades are going to be the ones that really have the upper hand going forward because you can't necessarily automate wiring a house at least yet.
Maybe someday, but today you can. And I think you're right. I mean, if you listen to Mike Rowe, and I'm a big fan of his, there is a huge need, and there's something I think really valuable that comes with that kind of work. I often say this: when I moved from the field as an electrician to working in an office, I didn't understand the difference. And part of it was when I worked physically every day, I would go home tired physically. But when I started working in an office and doing project takeoffs and different things on another side of the trades, it was a different kind of tired at the end of the day. It was mentally tired. And part of that, I think, was my dyslexia. I had to deal with things that I hadn't for a long time. So having to process and think about things that were written or drawings, it changed my work day definitely. But folks that want to work in the trades today, first of all, there's a huge need. So many kids for years and years have been pushed towards college, and I know many people that have degrees in areas that have nothing to do with their actual work anymore. But folks that go into the trades, you can start working right away, start making money instead of accumulating debt while you're in school. You're doing something that you can measure visually, like I talked about. You can see the product of your work really readily, and it is a very exciting time with, especially in the electrical field. There's so many cool things going on. You think about electrification and vehicles and all the infrastructure they're going to have to build around data centers and all this stuff. There's so much to do, and it's also a very good career. You can make great money, and there's no shortage of opportunity.
No, and it doesn't always have to end in the field, right? Like you're a perfect example of like you started in the field, but then you had great opportunities other places too because of the actual working roll up your sleeves knowledge that you had, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every job I've had since then, people look at me as the top candidate because of that experience. They're like, well, he's got this and he worked in the field. So it's definitely an advantage. And I also look at that learning that 5 years or so of my life. I learned more things that I use every day than anything else I've ever done.
Yeah. Yeah, that is I mean, there's just something so tangible about well, like you said, like flipping on the switch and seeing it work, right? But then when you're at home and there's a light switch just out, like it's very practical information too to have.
Yeah, I've helped neighbors and friends and family actually across the country have called me and said, "Hey, this is happening. What should I do?" And I'm able to troubleshoot over the phone different things. So I really enjoy it. And I've also traveling a bit. I've found myself in situations in foreign countries where I've got to fix a problem and have been called senior electrician, and so a lot of fun.
That's so cool. So I would love to know, like, when did your obviously like that junior high, early high school was probably challenging times for you, but then when did you start to see it as a strength? Like, was it in your career or what part? Like,
Probably the last 2 years of high school, I really started to get into a rhythm of what I needed to do to learn things or perform, and I feel like I conquered it. And then when I got out of school, I actually did. I worked as a welder for a little while, and I did a couple of other things before I became an electrician. And then when I first started in the electrical apprenticeship program and started going to school at night, um, it just really fit. The idea that I was reading things that I could understand tangibly. It's like I could easily compare them to stuff that I did every day. So it actually was it was a accelerant to all of the understanding and learning. And I just thrived in that apprenticeship program. In fact, my final year, I was a top student every year, but my final year, I didn't miss a single question. I don't know that anybody's ever done that, but it was, again, I just felt like I was in my place, in the right place at the right time. And since then, it's been, just I have a lot of people that I work with would tell me, "Hey, we're trying to solve a problem, or we need somebody that's going to look at this in a different way. What do you think?" And I would look at things and maybe give them an answer, and not always, but many times it's something they hadn't thought of. So, been really a strength.
yeah, it's interesting to me. I think we take it for granted being dyslexic, right? Like it looks so like the solution to the problem usually is like so obvious to us that we second guess and we're like, well, I can't say that out loud in a meeting. Like clearly everybody else sees that. Why? Clearly my answer is wrong. And then when you do say it out loud and you have like the guts to do it, they're like, oh my gosh, how did we not see that? And I'm like, wait, you really didn't see that? Like,
Yeah,
really?
I have a perfect example. It was I was working for an electrical distributor. It was actually my first month, I think, there, and we were doing inventory. And they reached a point in the process where they were looking at the data and they didn't know what to do next. And the problem was the computer system counted the item only in each location, and the variances were based on if it's in three places, it's got to be exact in each one, not the net of it all might be perfect, but each location has to be correct. And they're like, well, how do we, this is hundreds of thousands of lines of data. How do we, I said, well, I know what to do. And Excel is another one of those things that just felt like natural for me. And so I exported to Excel, put it in the pivot table, and grouped it by item. And I said, here's your variances, the top 100. And I did that in about 5 minutes, and they just mouthed open. And it actually led to a bunch of system enhancements so that next time they did inventory, it was all incorporated into the system. So some things just, it's just obvious, like you said.
Yeah, it is so like it's almost like too obvious to us that we're like, gosh, should I say this? And then it is really gratifying when you're like, oh my gosh, like I hold the keys to this. I wonder if like so I don't know, I've never really talked about this on the podcast before, but and I might sound a little crazy, but if I let my brain just like go and don't focus too hard, I come up with much better solutions than if I'm actually like trying really hard to think. Do you ever have the same experience?
Yeah, I do, and I have to give myself space away from things sometimes because I like recently I've been working on an RFP, request for proposal for a big software project, and I have to give myself a day off here or there because I'll get so close to it that I can't be objective anymore, and it's just it's consuming my thinking. So I've got to go do something else, and I'll go in the garage and work on something with my hands, and it helps me clear my mind. But yeah, I do get, and I worry sometimes that I overthink, that I get into this pattern of, thinking about all the possibilities and all the outcomes that can happen and then force ranking them about importance or impact. And, just got to go, okay, I can set it down. Uh, but yeah, I agree.
It's like so I always joke, I always have my best ideas when I'm on the treadmill, like literally at the point where I'm like, I might die or I might make it. I'm not sure. And so I feel like that's kind of like the garage for you. It's like my brain is so almost exhausted into like subconscious, just like survival mode at that point that it's like all these ideas start flooding me. And then all these random people get text from me of like, don't let me forget about this and don't let me forget about that. And I solved this problem. But it's usually like right around that state on the treadmill where I think my body has just like kind of shut down a little bit and it can actually think and not overthink like we tend to do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The other thing happens to me if I go to bed thinking about something too much, I won't be able to get to sleep. Or as soon as I wake up the first time, I won't be able to go back to sleep. So I started this routine where at night I'm getting ready to go to bed. I'll sit down and clear my mind, and I put them in my phone in the reminders app. But I just download everything, take it all out, what all the things I'm going to think about, put it in there so that I know it's in a safe place and I can get back to it. But then I can relax and go to sleep. So my mind can be very active.
Yes. Yeah, I agree, and I coach people on that exact process, right? Like, that is because we have to dump the information somewhere, and we're scared that we're gonna lose it. I think it's probably part of the working memory, challenge of, like, not being able to hold stuff in as long as maybe we'd like, but as long as it's in a safe place and you can rest assured. Even in my trainings that I do, like, in the corporate world, I always have, like, a brain dump section off to, like, the right-hand side, so people like literally if it's like I need to pick up Paul at soccer practice or I can't forget this at the grocery store, I always encourage people, I'm like, just write it down so then you can get back to learning what we're learning about in the room. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I have so many lists. I have so many lists of things that again, they're thoughts that I don't want to lose, but I know they're in a safe place that I can get back to, and that's comforting. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Um, so how do you think what are the challenges actually? I want to kind of we talked a lot about the strengths, which I think more people need to talk about, but what are some of the challenges that you face on a daily basis being dyslexic at work?
Yeah, for me, if I've got to read anything really intense, technical, I know it's going to take me a while, so I've got to break it down. I talked about do things a little bit at a time, um, but I also try to think about things in a different way. Like I'm working on a speech for next week for an event, and it's about 5 minutes. So I'll write it, and then I'll make a video of myself speaking it, and I can listen to myself. So it's just different sensory inputs of the same thing help me. Um, it's funny that I've never been much in reading for fun, for recreation. And when the Harry Potter books came out, I made a decision then that I'm going to read all of these as they come out. I'm going to read them all, and I was able to do it. But in the beginning, to get myself going, I had to do the audiobook and have the book in front of me to keep my attention, because I would also drift into writing my own story, and I'm no longer reading what's on the page. I'm just thinking. So that's a struggle for me, focusing on things for a while, and then I've never had trouble with numbers, with math, and it's been a strength area. But um, I tend to, if I've got two things to do and one of them's math, I'll go that way. So it becomes a procrastination problem for the other things. So I've got to hold myself accountable to do the other work. Maybe that's not as easy for me, so that I have balance. And then I end up getting, there are times when I get too focused on the tactical, what I've got to do, and I'm not thinking about the overall strategy. And I've become very intentional about that, but and I think I'm doing well. But it's really something I have to work at to make sure that I think about the higher level things. It's not just what's in front of me.
Yeah. I love the reading the audiobook and the visual of it at the same time. I encourage clients, like, put on the closed captions even on TV. It'll keep your attention if you're reading the words and listening. It sounds silly, but our brains will literally it's so funny. I've never thought about it this way, but my brain does rewrite the story, like, ahead of the book if I let it, instead of, like, focusing on, like, what is the author actually saying. I'm not the Nancy's not the author of this book, but I feel like I am sometimes.
Yeah, and I think most people can understand that in some form. With if you read the book versus you watch the movie, your interpretation would be different. I think for us though, it's even harder because again, I feel like sometimes, I could have written a better ending, or this chapter would have been better this way. And we're actually in a world where there's so many opportunities for other things to catch our attention. I've found myself with my iPad and my phone and watching something on TV, and I'll realize, what am I doing? This is too much, and which of these things really should I focus on? But I like a lot of input, and sometimes it's a good way to disconnect, I think, for a little while, but it can't be your like hours of your time, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, is there something that you do to, like, catch yourself from doing it too much? Because I think that it's this, like, weird curse of, like, hyper focus and, like, a challenge to focus at the same time, right? Um, and especially, like you said, with so many different things catching our attention, like, literally, there's PhDs that are, like, working on how to suck our attention into an app or into a show or whatever it is. Anything that you do that's kind of, like, maybe breaks the cycle or something that keeps you away from it?
I haven't found anything really 100% foolproof, but I'll do things like, I have reminders on my phone for certain things, like certain times a day I want to do this or do this, like so I can transition my time. And I just have to be disciplined about it. So it's things like exercising or getting out of the house and going for a walk. And, so that helps a little bit. But I also found that since COVID and working remote, I'm at home almost all the time if I'm not on the road with traveling for work. It's harder because that ride home, that 15-20 minutes in the car to create space between work and home and other parts of your life was really healthy, and now that's really kind of gone. So I've talked to some folks about this over the years since COVID, and some great suggestions have come up, and I have implemented, some I haven't. But segregating the space so you're in a different room, or it's not it's as less adjacent as possible, That's part of why I'll go in the garage because I'll get away from it, or I'll leave the house for a little while. But that separation helps. And what happens to me is I call them time vampires. I'll get into something and I just don't know where the time went. And I've got to get away from the computer a certain number of hours a day or it would just consume me.
Yeah, I agree. It is I mean, I think everybody struggles with that, but for our brains, I think it's sometimes a bigger hill to climb, for some of us, and we love to learn, right? So, like, if you put us on a learning project or something that we just find on YouTube and we become instantly, like, enthralled in learning about it, it can be a challenge to even, like, break yourself away, and you're kind of telling yourself, "But I'm learning, like, I'm doing something good, or this is tied to work, and so it could help me," like, we're telling ourselves all these stories, right?
Yeah, you try to justify there's a benefit. And, I do, I'll have, I don't know how many things are in my YouTube watch list right now, and there's such varied topics. If you saw the channels I subscribe to, you would think I'm insane. But it is, I love the idea of picking up new things and topics and learning and having things to talk about too, because I love talking to people. So, like, I'll go to my doctor and we talk about Neanderthal DNA and the project that was going on with that, and then Denosovin bone found in some cave. And, we just get off into these topics. But I was curious, do you have this? Do you do this? I'll watch a lot of this stuff at 2x speed because I want to get through it, but I can't watch it at a normal speed because it's not fast enough. It's not engaging enough for me. So I'll move on to the next thing. But if I do that, it brings my focus because you really have to look at it and watch it to keep it. If you don't, I just start drifting into some other thought. It's the same thing.
Yeah. I do the same thing with audiobooks too. Like, I couldn't listen at the normal rate speed. It's usually 1.5. Sometimes if it's not real in depth, I can do 2. But yeah. Yeah, no, it's fascinating, or I'll catch myself doing something really, like, monotonous, like cleaning while I'm listening. So, like, at least my brain is doing 2 things at once. I'm I'm telling myself I'm being productive while I'm learning something I don't need to know.
Yeah, I do that. It's funny. And I can do it both ways. Like if you're doing something kind of where your brain can rest and you're listening to something more engaging, or the other way around where you're listening to music while you work. That's harder for me because then I'll again get distracted by, well, what's the next thing I want to listen to? I'll start to think about what other songs I want to listen to instead of what I'm working on. So it's kind of a teeter totter for me. But I do need more stimulation sometimes. And if I could get that from the thing, like by turning up the speed, that makes it better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. That's awesome. So, what if I mean, I love that you recognized your dyslexia, like, so early, or the teacher did, Mr. Murphy, right? Um, he was recognizing it and brought it to light. What if some people are like, "Wow, this sounds like me." Any tips or tricks that you've learned over the years that you can share with listeners, especially in, like, the business world? Because sometimes it's hard. Like, we do a lot of written reading, writing, so there's a lot of technology, but anything that you've found that really works well?
Yeah. If I get, at least for me, if I get emails or things that I've got to read, there's a nice feature now in most Microsoft products where you can have it read it to you. And I'll find that's again a way for me to, if someone sends me a document, 20 pages, and I've got to read the whole thing, I know it's going to take me probably twice as long as it would anyone else. And maybe that's just in my own mind. But if I do that, it makes me be present with that thing. So all these examples we've been talking about, that's really, I think, the outcome is that I'm able to focus on that thing. And that's not all dyslexia. There's more going on there. But I just think that's, you have to be confident in yourself too. I never felt like I need to apologize for, maybe I need a little longer to think about this, or I need a little longer to read it, because I think I'm going to get to a really good place once I do. There's something else. I'm extroverted, and I'm also aware that not everyone's that way. Some people are very introverted, and I've found that if you let people that are introverted think and consider the outcome, if you ask them a question and let them think, don't ask follow-ups or distract them, let them think about it and give you an answer, they give you a really good answer. So there's We need all of us and all of those different ways of thinking, that neurodiversity, as you said, the idea that I'm going to do it a little different than somebody else that I work with is acceptable because they're going to do the same thing. So don't think you're less because of that. You're just different. You need your time, or you need different stimulus, or you need a way to focus. Um, just don't apologize for that. Just do it.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think we do. We either apologize, we try to like cover it up that we need extra time to read, or like a different space to read or quiet or whatever it is. Or I see a lot of people like work twice as hard just to like make up and compensate for it. And it isn't necessary, but I'm guilty of this. I'm speaking on personal experience. I feel like I have to like overcompensate for my brain when really it's just if it's focused on the right things, it's great, right? Like, it's just when I'm
Yeah,
trying to fit the square peg in the round hole that it's not as great.
totally agree. And I've had some times. I don't want anybody to think that I'm perfect. I've mastered this thing. I do have moments where it just kind of rears its head, and it reminds me of, oh well, I got to start over, or I got to think about it. I had something happen years ago. A sales guy I was working with, I was his inside guy. He actually, you hear these stories that he brought me an order on a golf scorecard. Literally, he had it written on a golf scorecard, handed it to me, and in handwriting, it threw me. At that point, most of what I got was through an email, or someone had, there was something typed. It was that way, but in handwriting, and the way this guy wrote it, it really kind of triggered the. I couldn't understand what it was, and there were some part numbers and things, and I said, Matthew, what is this? And he goes, these are breakers. They're this part numbers from the company you used to work for. You don't recognize them? And it made me feel bad that, like, you know what? I'm dyslexic. I'm sorry, I missed it. So I had to type them out, literally one letter at a time. Then it was like, oh, crystal clear. I knew exactly what everything was. So there are examples like that that come up from time to time where it kind of reminds me that it's I'm not fixed in a way. I'm not cured. It's always going to be there. It's just a way that I approach things that has to change a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of I speak at some like high schools and like local schools just to get the word out there. And usually I get asked like, do you think that there'll be a cure for dyslexia? And I'm outspoken and probably ruffle some feathers when I say I don't want a cure and I don't think that there is anything to be cured. Do I flip a 3 and an E around? Absolutely, right? Especially the handwriting ones, like, it's bad. Yeah, but also, we wouldn't be able to see the patterns and the different things if we didn't have that same brain, and the mechanical part, you can see how gears turn and belts turn and, like, all of the different things in that 3D visualization and spatial reasoning in a way that most people can't too, see, and I don't think you can take the good without the bad, right? Like, per se, not that anything is good or bad, but and so kids will look at me like, "Really? You wouldn't wanna be, like, cured?" And I'm like, "No," like, I mean, some days, definitely, some days.
I think there are certain things I'd like to be able to do better, but I think I wouldn't trade them, like this for that. And I also think about, at some point starting to become aware of how many other people are dyslexic and how many truly successful people are. And think about what the world would be like without those minds, those people to help us with things. It's staggering, really, to think about.
I mean, literally, so 20% of people are dyslexic across the globe, right? So 20%, that's huge. Like the Richard Bransons, the Steve Jobs, like there are so many, a lot of actors and actresses. There's so many people. But 3 out of the 5 original sharks on Shark Tank are dyslexic, right? Like there is so much goodness in these brains. And there's also the kind of negative side of like school is hard. School, those
Yeah.
12 years in school are not built for our brains. If we can just get kids through with their confidence intact and have 1 or 2 teachers that believe in us, the outcome is drastically different than the kiddos that don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I wouldn't trade it for anything, but certainly it doesn't come without challenges.
Yeah, I think it also teaches you resilience. I look at getting through what I described through school. I felt like once I did, I was like, no, I can, what's next? Bring it. And I've kind of I'll tell people all the time, I've had managers ask me, are you up to this? whatever that new thing was. And I would always tell them, I'm not scared. I can do anything. If you give it to me long enough, let me take it apart and put it back together. I'll figure it out. We'll get there. So I again, it's that's part of what makes it a superpower is you've had to overcome something. And I've been a proponent of gaming for a long time. You think about video games, and one of the things I think video gaming teaches people, our minds, is that you can try, fail, learn, keep doing that, and you will succeed. The only failure is just stopping. So you have to keep trying. You have to keep trying and learning. You will succeed. So core lessons in all of this.
It really is. I see it with in both my children. I mean, it's painful to watch them go through school and they have to put in a lot of extra work to get through it. Um, they are also so darn resilient, right? Like failure, I don't know how else to describe it other than like failure isn't failure. It just didn't work. Like that one
Yeah.
thing didn't work, but it's not a, like in my mind, I don't process anything as a failure. Probably because if I did, I would just beat myself up like all day, every day, right? Like it's just not effective for me or productive. And I see that in our kids too. And just like the between the curiosity and the resilience, I think it's a good combination of just always innovating the simplest things. Interesting. What I would love to just spend a few minutes talking about. So like on the technology side and where you're really focused now, how do you think neurodivergent brains and dyslexic brains are really going to like thrive going forward?
I'll tell you, I think that's, with AI in particular, um, if you think about what colleges or even secondary school we're going to have to equip kids. What are the things we're going to teach them? What are the curriculums going to be? And it is lateral thinking, and it's problem solving and those kind of things, because we'll have mechanisms to help us do the tedious things. We'll be free to do more with our upper capacity to think and imagine and dream, and so I think we're positioned really well for that kind of work. It's already kind of how we operate today. So I think there's going to be more and more opportunity. You think about in the industry I'm in, a counter salesperson today, the typical day, someone hands you a list, and that list may be on a piece of cardboard or whatever from the job. And you got to take that list of things in trade language and turn it into part numbers, and then price things, and ultimately give the customer a package back that's here's the stuff you need to do the job. And the really good people at that role will also recognize this is a system, this is something they're building, and here's what might be missing. That's the truly valuable part of that exchange. Matching the part numbers and things, AI is going to do that. That's the longest part to learn, honestly. AI is going to do that. So people will be able to be effective faster in jobs, and that creative thinking about, I can imagine what you're building. Here's what you might need to complete the job. So you don't have to make another trip back to see me. That's where the imaginative mind, all these things about lateral thinking, that's where that comes in. So I think that's going to enable more and more.
I completely agree. It is all of those rote processes are going to be automated, right? Because they can be. The learning speed, like you said, is going to go up incrementally. I mean, or exponentially, really, because those that's machine learning, right? Like that is like literally what it is. It's going to, and we're already there where we can. And I love it. I love how you say it comes in on a piece of cardboard because that is literally our reality. Like I think people, especially like college kids, they think that like everything comes in an email and it's already like documented in an Excel sheet and it's got SKU numbers and all this like pretty data. That is not real life for a lot of, especially distribution companies, right? And counter
Yeah.
sales guys, they see it all. I've worked in distribution for years, and like a chicken scratch that's legible is like the best thing ever, right? Like that's best case. Um, and so but like the technology is so good at this point that we can scan the piece of cardboard and translate it. But what AI cannot do is the thinking part of the design in the bigger process, right? Like it can connect dots, but there's and the emotional part, like the actual human connection. Um, I mean, it might get there, but I don't think we're there.
Yeah, I think so many businesses, especially in distribution, with the salesperson and the customer, it's been very much based in a relationship. These are people you work with every day, and they're friends. You solve problems for them. You help them, succeed. And I think really the right way to look at all of this technology is that if we do it right, it enables more of that than you even do now. We've kind of, it's funny with COVID, we drifted away from some of that interaction because people were afraid to be in the same space. But I think it's going to come back just gangbusters with this. That valuable piece is the human in the loop. None of it is going to be just we'll push a button and go home for the day. It's what we'll be doing is different, and I think it's going to elevate everything that we do because we'll have more time to do the really valuable things, like I said.
Yeah, yeah. At that conference that you and I were both at, I heard multiple times human led and AI driven or some variation of that. And I really like that. Like I think it needs to be led by humans. And I think every CEO I talk to there, every leader is not looking at cutting heads or laying off people because of AI. They're just looking at what can we automate so that our people are doing the work that really matters and taking the other stuff off their plate so that they're not overburdened. I don't know who isn't doing 2 jobs at this point, right? Like, everybody's doing multiple jobs, so if we can clear some of the clutter, like, we're all winning.
Yeah, totally agree. And um, there's a quote I heard. I forget where I heard this, but it's common for people today to wonder, will my company replace me with AI? And the truth is, your organization is not actively looking to replace their workforce. There may be things they want to get better at, like you said, but that's not what you really need to worry about. You need to get in and be on the early adopter side of this because your competitor using this technology with your customer is what's going to replace you. So getting in early and understanding the opportunities and figuring out how to add value for your people and your customer is really key. And the other thing, this quote automation stuff, and I'm sure you saw some of that at the DSG conference. One of the fears that comes out of it is the people that, let's say, that counter person, they're going to say, well, that's going to replace me. I don't want to do it. Or they're going to say, well, how much of my commission is it going to cost me? So I think in these things, change management for leaders is such an important topic that you go into it anticipating where the resistance is going to be so you can hit it head on and let people know, hey, by the way, if you do this right, you'll make more money because you'll have more time to do the things that you actually get paid commission to do, those tasks. You'll have more opportunity to do it. So it's all about positioning and letting people feel comfortable and getting through the fear. Because it's funny enough, everyone thinks about the Terminator story and other things too. Those come up, but I think I'm more an optimist about where we're headed with these tools.
I am too. I am too. I
Yeah,
think, I think it's all about adoption, right? And, like, getting in there and figuring it out. If you're not adopting the new technologies, you are going to be left behind. Like, there will be somebody else in your space that will, either if it's another employee or another company, a competitor, somebody will take the advantage and do it, so it might as well be you. And so much of it is prompting, right? It's like the system engineering on the backside that, again, dyslexic brains are because we're curious and we just think differently about things. I think it's a great opportunity for us to kind of step up and make a name for ourselves in a space where we might not have been able to.
yeah. I'll share something with you, and this is one of those little things that somebody told me I never would have thought of that. Um, this is not my own idea. I've heard other people say this, but I hadn't heard anybody say it before I thought of it. So maybe great minds think alike. But um, something I started doing early on was you give, let's say, ChatGPT a prompt, and you go through this back and forth exchange where you're fine tuning what it gives you, right? So it gives you an answer, and you say, well, I meant this. Can you change? And you get to a point where, okay, that's what I wanted. I'll ask it then, what is the prompt I should have given you to start with to get this answer? So it helps you understand how you could make the prompt better. I've heard before you start, hey, give me a prompt for this, and then you fill in the blanks. That works too. But I love the idea of the reverse engineering approach that it's there now. It knows the answer. Well, here, how do I do it next time? So
Exactly, exactly. And it's just those little tweaks on thinking, right? Like it's that one more question of how do I ask this better next time so we don't have to go through 7 different iterations to
yeah,
get there? Um, yeah, I mean with my children, it's this weird time where I think schools are scared of AI and I'm like scared that my kids don't know AI, right? Like I'm like, no, you have to use it because I know how quickly it changes for me in the business world and I have trouble keeping up. I can only imagine starting, right, when they're into college and trying to understand all of this. And so I'm really pushing them to, like, to use it in their lawn mowing business and anything that they know how, need to use it. Um, but it's all about how you ask the question and what are you trying to get out of it. And I think that creative brain of ours is it just comes so natural, and we can kind of think 3 steps ahead sometimes of kind of preempting, kind of teasing out what we need to get to a little bit easier. I know, like with some of my friends, I'm like, "Well, ask it this and act like that, and then export it like this and blah, blah, blah." And they're like, "All in one?" I'm like, "Yeah, like, just tell it exactly what you need. Don't waste 5 prompts on that." And so they're like, "Oh, yeah, you're right." And so it's, again, just a different way of thinking, but I love it, and I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love one of my favorite things is to see someone have their AI aha moment. When they finally go, "Oh, wait, I didn't know you could do that," or "Oh, now I know how to ask." I had a friend of mine. She was working with her son. I think he's like 12, on his homework, and it's gotten to the point where she doesn't remember that math. It's getting complex enough. And she sent me a text and said, "Hey, I tried to use ChatGPT to help with this math, and it's wrong." And I told her, I said, "Well, what did you ask? How did you ask?" And we went through that process, and she got that aha, like, now I know when I would need to, how I need to do this. You have to think of it like if you just hired an intern and it's their first day on the job, and the first thing you ask them, they didn't get it quite right, would you fire that intern, or would you coach them and help them get better and help them learn? We really need to do the same thing with AI and that prompting, like you mentioned. That's the teaching. That's how you'll get that tool to understand or grasp. And understand is really not the right word right now, but it makes the connections between what it has in its large language model and what you're trying to access from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know with my son, he does Singapore math as like the style of math. And so it will actually give me like the bar models and drawing it out versus like the other type. And so I have to say, like, please give me this, because I'm in the same position as your friend. Like the math in sixth grade is way over my head. Probably was in third grade too. But I have to like prompt it of like the style of math, because there's multiple styles of math now. That so and then he's like, "Oh yeah, that's how my teacher taught it." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah. It's a great tool though. You think about, like you said, schools are afraid, that thing. It's kids that know how to use these tools, like we've talked about with people in business, you need to adopt early. If it becomes the part of the way they work or process or solve problems, it's like, I always think about tools like, you have a power drill in your garage, you're going to drill a hole. Well, there's an old style drill you can probably buy on eBay that's the old egg beater style. It'll still drill a hole. But which would you really rather use when you have to do that task? So why wouldn't you enable someone with a better tool if you have one? So that's really, and again, that's part of the messaging that we're trying to instill in our members through NAD is that, hey, you got to try things, you got to experiment, you got to be willing to fail a little bit, but fail fast and learn. So all of this stuff kind of comes back to the same foundation, I think.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. It's so exciting and such a good time to have a differently wired brain. And I'm so thankful for people like you that are willing to share your story, because it takes like all different stories, right? Like my story doesn't connect with everybody, but if we can get enough stories out there, I think that they resonate with different people. And I just appreciate you being authentic and vulnerable enough to share your story today, Scott. It's really it's refreshing to hear. And I hope it gives people hope in kind of the new world that we're coming into.
Yeah, that would be amazing to hear if that was an outcome. Really, I'm glad to share. Like I told you, I can run into somebody tomorrow and talk to them for an hour. And I'm glad to have met you and have a conversation, whether other people listen to it or not. Really, for me, it's just fun to talk to you. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and thank you for all your work with NAAD and, just bringing all different thinking styles to distribution too. I think it's fascinating. So, awesome. Any final words or thoughts? If there's I always think about the high school kids that are out there that are wondering, do I go to college? Do I go into a trade? Do I just go get a job? I'm always advocating for like a gap year is not the worst thing in the world, because school's hard for us. So taking a breather and doing some work feels like a walk in the park sometimes for us, honestly. But any final words or encouragement for that type of group?
Yeah, I think, and I actually gave the same advice to my nieces that um, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So don't feel like you have to figure it out all right now. It's a good opportunity and time in your life to try things, to learn what you like, to find the thing you're passionate about, and then choose your career from there. It would be amazing if the first thing you tried turned out to be your life's mission and it was what you were happy with and you stayed there until you're retired. But really, the journey is really the most important part. It's seeing things from a different point of view, being willing to take a risk. I've moved 8 times for work. I hope I'm done with that by now. But every one of those was like a new adventure, a new city, a new job, a new role, always challenging myself to grow further. And like you said, we hunger for learning. I think learning is a lifetime thing. It's not something that you finish when you walk out of school. That's actually when it begins, I think. So be open to that and take an active role in your own growth and learning and all those things, and share with other people. You know, if you know something, I think the best way to be valuable to an organization or team you work on is to share what you know. People will hold on to knowledge and think that's why I'm valuable, but really the true value comes in enabling the rest of the team with everything you know. So if I learn something, everybody else gets the opportunity to learn it too.
I love that. From an HR perspective, I can spot the information holders a mile away, right? And it just it's not effective way to lead. I understand where like the fear piece that it comes from, but it it's so gratifying to share your knowledge with other people and to make other people better than you are. I think that's what leadership is, right? Like it's just helping
Yeah,
others be better than we are. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate this conversation because hopefully we can create more dyslexic leaders that are better than Scott and Nancy, right? And go change the world. So awesome. Thank you again for taking your time to talk with us today and really share your story with listeners.
happy to do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Until next time, friends, enjoy that unique brain you've been given.